Good morning and welcome to the VC Notes Coffee Talk version. As many of you are aware, we've done this a couple of times this year where we invite in a special guest and have an opportunity to just have a visit and a casual conversation. So for this week's VC Notes Coffee Talk version, we are very delighted and honored to have our Lieutenant Governor, Delbert Hosemann, with us today. We're very pleased to have you here. Thank you for making time to come visit with us. I know you are a very busy man and gearing up for a very busy and interesting legislative session starting in January.
We are.
So I appreciate you making time to come see us.
I'm glad to be here. Again.
And I also want to say to everybody that's listening and to you how much we value the relationship that we have with you. I spend a lot of time talking to people in my position all across the country at different academic medical centers, and to have people in leadership such as yourself in the role that you're in that's interested in healthcare and really concerned and takes the time to get into it and to be available to do things like this, to have the opportunity to have conversations with you during the year. It's not normal. This is when I speak to
It's normal for me, I guess, maybe.
When I speak to my colleagues all around the country, they don't have this kind of relationship. So I do appreciate your support of the medical center. I appreciate your interest in healthcare and the relationship that we have. I value that relationship personally, and it's important for the medical center. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been excited to be here. We've been working with y'all for a long time. As you know, I've even been in the basement of the dentistry building.
That's right.
I've been down where the mechanical room. I've been around this place. We started our relationship with you many years ago when Dr. Connolly and Reuben Anderson and Dr. Shirley. The North Clinic, as you will probably remember, was out in front of the hospital, and it was just a real concentrated area with a lot of people coming and going. It wasn't conducive either to medical treatment here or to patients who wanted to come here particularly. So I remember Dr. Connolly and I and Dr. Shirley called me and Reuben Anderson and asked us to go out to the Jackson Medical Mall. And it was completely, there was one tenant in there, I think a Piccadilly or something, and everything else. They're still there. And so it was just completely empty, and there was dirt. It was a mess. So Dr. Shirley said he wanted to make that a place that would serve healthcare, particularly for the underserved in Mississippi. Dr. Connolly was just a champion for that. The only problem was we didn't have any money, of course. So Dr. Shirley didn't have any, and so we started talking, and 3 banks from Mississippi put up the money to buy that mall. We bought it out of bankruptcy for about $3.5 million, and that was like 50 acres and I think 700,000 square feet. So you can imagine what that would be cost us today. Then Dr. Connolly was great in working with IHL. They had never given a lease for like longer than 10 years. But in order to finance it and pay the bonds back and pay the loan back off, we needed a 15-year lease from IHL. And he was just a mover and a shaker to convince IHL that's what they needed to do. And of course, the rest is history. Y'all cycled through that. A lot of primary care. I think they see 200,000 people a year out there. Your cancer group was out there. Your heart study was out there for African Americans. And it just has evolved. I was just talking to them this morning. They built 25 houses near there. Now they're going to try to build another 25. So you've really revitalized the area while providing first-class health care to people that probably would never have gotten it, quite frankly.
That's very
so
nice.
we've been at, that would have been in the early 90s. So we've been pleased to have the ability to work with y'all. And so many of your physicians and whatnot have come through here, or that have taught here. Dr. Lohmeyer and others have done the research from Dr. Guyton, have been friends of ours, and their children were at our house and whatnot. The medical center really is not just a center for medicine, it's a center for people. And those people permeate the metro area here. And
I love that phrase. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful
that's
way
how I
to
got
say it.
elected.
You did good.
I come up with this stuff. I don't know, whatever.
So
no, very helpful. Very been a long relationship with y'all.
Yeah. we've got about 10,000 employees and 3,000 students, and many of them will listen to this, and I bet you out of all the people listening to this, there are not 50 that could say they've been under the basement of that dental school. So
I don't think OSHA would allow them to. First, don't put them down and we'll get sued for something.
That's quite a feat.
I think y'all have built on and on and on. Back, there was no Blair Batson then. There was no center that Sanderson Farms had been so great. Joe Franklin had been great. And the medical school wasn't here that Governor Bryant was pushing so hard for that we're sitting in today. So there's been a lot of changes since the early 90s. I think so.
A lot of good things.
I think so.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go to college? How did your career path end up in politics? How did you get
I don't
where
know.
you are now?
I know where I started, but I don't know how I got here. We had, when I grew up in Warren County, and as they say, my people were from Warren County. My daddy's buried there, my granddaddy's buried there. One of my uncles fought there. I mean, we've been there a long time. So we had that relationship, and applied to the University of Notre Dame. Was lucky enough to get in. Graduated from there. During the war, went in the Army. That's sent home things everybody else did, and then went to University of Mississippi Law School and got through that. And then took an extra year to go to the tax school at New York University. So I got the Master's in Laws and Taxation after that. And that led to a business relationship with a lot of people, including the reason that I was doing the Jackson Medical Mall. Back in the old days, I did a lot of nonprofit corporate work as well, just regular work. And that gave me a venue into a lot of the business affairs, a lot of the healthcare affairs. I represented a lot of physicians in their personal PAs, they call them, professional associations, their retirement plans, those kinds of things, and a lot of the business matters. So it left me with a lot of work in that area. And then when I was, when all the children had got out of the house, the Secretary of State, Eric Clark, had done a great job, and he decided to retire. So I thought about that. We hadn't redone any of the business laws, the securities laws, the nonprofit laws. There was no voter ID. There was the 16th section land, which they manage, is about 600,000 acres of real property, and it was not being managed well, I didn't think. So I told my wife, Lynn, that I thought maybe we should run for Secretary of State. And she said, "Have you lost your mind?" Which is a good sign. So in the first precinct, it was a tie vote, 1-1. So we had to rearrange a little bit there, but eventually we were lucky enough to get hired and spent a lot of time at the Secretary of State's office getting the business laws in effect and whatnot. And then we acquired a lot of public property. I think it's really important for people today to have a public space to go to, just like public health care. And so we acquired, I think, probably 20,000 acres over the time I was there. We acquired an island, Cat Island, that you now own, and the people that work here and citizens of Mississippi own. First time we'd ever done that. We raised that rent on the property, that 16th section land, which is, there's 16th section land, there's 36 sections in a township, and the 16th section was left for education, right in the middle. Thomas Jefferson did that. And so we raised over $1 billion for public education by running that land properly, and the forest products, oil and gas leases, all that other stuff that goes on to it. Really enjoyed that period. That lasted about 12 years. And then the lieutenant governor position came open, so y'all hired me to do that.
And what was your wife's reaction to that? Did she have the same question?
Same vote. We're still 1-1, I think.
I have to say that was a good day for Mississippi. Thank you for your service and for being willing to do that.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned your family, and I'm not sure that everybody knows that you've got a son that's actually a graduate.
Yeah, well, part of our relationship here, we went through the whole thing here when he went to the University of Mississippi and came here for medical school. And so we watched, from day one, how all of that occurred. We were there for the white coat ceremony. That was all really exciting. And y'all must have done a really good job, because he got Dr. Andrews, who is the kind of the world-renowned sports authority over in Alabama that's done all the Tommy John surgery and all this other. He took Chad in to do his internship, so that was really good, and kept him a year. And so he had a chance to get a really good medical, and then also a really good training program from Dr. Andrews. They still have a group together that gets together. I think all those orthopedic guys do.
Well, I am pleased most of all that he came back to Mississippi for his practice.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah.
There were a lot of other places he could have gone, and they looked at there were a lot of, when they finally get through with all of that, and all your physicians here, all have, and nurses, and all of them will have a lot of selections, that opportunities they can do. And we try to encourage them to come back to Mississippi, hope and pray they do, and real pleased when they do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're
That's
very
part of our
glad
program for next year will be the nurse retention program.
We're very pleased that Chad set the example by coming back to practice in Mississippi. That's
Me too.
Wonderful. So one more kind of personal question. Before we started the cameras, we were chit-chatting, and you mentioned that you got your run in this morning. So I'm just so impressed with that. Tell us about your running.
Well, actually in college, like a lot of guys, we smoked a little bit, and the elevators went out in the Deposit Guarantee Plaza when I was about, probably that would have been about 30 maybe. And so being impatient, I decided to run up to our offices were on the 18th floor, so I lit out for my office. I wasn't going to work and wait on all of that. By the time I got up to about the 3rd or 4th floor, I realized that this wasn't going well. So I got a pair of Converse shoes and tried to run a mile, and that was hard. And so then I really got into it and ended up running the New York Marathon in 1983 and 87, and ran the Boston Marathon in 1985. Wow. And did a whole bunch of others. And we gradually evolved into running these 200-mile races that are relays. One's called Hood to Coast. There are 4 of them around the country. We did, all our running friends did that. But what that did was give you a continual training for the next race or the next marathon or whatever you were doing. And that's kept us, I think, physically fit over the years.
That's very good.
It is. I encourage everybody. It's really good to go out early in the morning and watch the world wake up.
Very nice. I do good if I get a walk in. That's my my goal.
You don't have to run.
You're going to inspire me to try to run.
A good fast walk is perfect.
Okay, good. So we've got about 10,000 employees here, and like I said, a little over 3,000 actually students this year. And I don't want to ask you any particular political questions, but if there's something that you wanted them to hear you say, what would that be? Take the opportunity.
Let me bifurcate it into 2 different parts. Okay. The first part is the general perception. We in Mississippi have, despite the COVID, and I'm going to come back to that for y'all, despite the COVID, we have had a record income year. Last year, we had $1 billion more than we anticipated receiving. Now we've got
revenues, tax revenues,
yeah, it was all sales tax, some income tax, mainly sales and corporate taxes, and people, for whatever reason, the government infusions or whatever, they started to really spend money. And of course, when they do, we get 7% of that. So we ended up $1 billion ahead, and then when President Biden was elected and they came forth with additional benefits, we got 1.8 billion. The cities and counties got 900 million. Universities got about 500 million. Education got about 1.6 billion. If you add all of that up, we're running about $8 billion. Now that is a huge amount. It never happened before in Mississippi, and tremendous challenge for us. Not to have that be spent in 1 or 2 years, but to have it 1 or 2 generations. So we're looking at water and sewer and broadband, which is we're looking at telemedicine, which comes back to you, and infrastructure, roads and bridges and stuff. So we're trying to put that into a process where we have long-term benefits. Now, coming back to you, we have been working hard on the healthcare portion. As you know,
I've got some ideas for you.
I know you've been nice to share those, and the tab. So we've been doing that a little bit, and I will tell you. Excuse me. We have a lot of healthcare benefits that we're going to get into. One, we have a nursing shortage. I was over at the nursing school with you the other day. Really important that we go forward with that. And we're looking at our nurse retention program, plus, and we're also looking at the ones that educate our nurses. Then, in addition to that, we have discussed with y'all that I think a primary requirement that we have a first-class university hospital. That needs to be here. And excuse me, when you look at that, our hospital was built, what, 1950 or something?
Well, the original building was 1955 is when it
1955.
opened. And then, of course, through the years, buildings have added on different times. You mentioned Dr. Connerly earlier, and when he was here as the Vice Chancellor, there was a building kind of boom that happened. The Weiser building was opened during that time. A number of the clinical buildings in particular were either designed and planned or opened during that time. So,
Yeah, I remember Dr. Nelson. I mean, we go really back. So I think it's time for us to look at that. We need to have the premier medical hospital here. And then when we went look at that further, kind of the next part of that is how we serve. When we first started all of this with the mall many years ago, the North Clinic was here, and now we have others. And really, that's the face of primary health care. So it needs to be the face of primary health care. So we've got a lot of things to do here, I think.
We do. It will certainly make for a very interesting legislative session. There's a lot on the plate related to marijuana and this, and just it'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll have a medical marijuana bill here pretty early in the session this time. It'll be strictly medical marijuana, not anything else.
So one more personal question, if you don't mind. What was your first job?
Well, I worked at an A&P, which is a grocery store that doesn't exist anymore, so I must not have done a very good job. Then we worked at a florist, and we worked, then we stamped steel for Laterno, which is an offshore drilling rig, which is why I have flat fingers in some cases. And then we ended up working on an assembly line for Westinghouse, building the 2x4 lights. All of those taught me a lot. I think you really need to remember where you came from to get where you're going. So a lot of those things, working with people on a line, from 7 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, just a few minutes break, that taught you a lot about how to get along with people and have things produced. Stamping steel taught me how to be careful about what you're doing when you're working. And the others, all different ones. I delivered pizza in school, to make ends meet, and which will astonish some of my staff, actually worked in the computer at the business school at Notre Dame.
All of that motivated you to go to law school?
I guess, I don't know. My father was a lawyer, and he'd been a lawyer here in the Bernini firm forever, and so that was just kind of a natural task, I think.
When I was growing up in high school and in college as well, I also worked at a grocery store. And it was, I enjoyed it, but it was good motivation to do something else, to decide that I wanted to go to medical school. I worked as a waitress as well during growing up in high school, and then also actually some in medical school. And I told my kids when they got old enough to get jobs, and several of them got jobs in sort of the food industry, I said, this is my main takeaway that I learned from being a waitress. There are some people that everything can be perfect and you can't please them. And there are some people that you could literally drop their food in their lap and they won't get mad at you. And the takeaway is, it's about them. That just remember that. Some people you can't please, and some people, you can't make mad. And
I do. I think getting along with the public, and I recommended all my children at one time or another waited on tables.
I think it's
just
good.
like you did. I think that's a tremendous learning experience.
It helps you learn how to interact with people.
It does.
So during your time as Lieutenant Governor, and Secretary of State, you talked about that a little bit, and now as Lieutenant Governor, when you get to that point where that job is done and you look back and you think, these are the things I've accomplished, what do you hope is on that list? When you get to the other side of this, what is it that, as Lieutenant Governor, you aspire to
we are blessed
accomplish?
to have 7 grandchildren. So everything that we do, or that any vision that I have, is where are they going to be? Where are they going to work? What kind of education do they have? What kind of health care do they have? what is their life going to be like, so that we can hopefully make it a little bit better at this stage, so that they'll have better opportunities, more opportunities than you and I had. So I think all of my thinking is about, and those range, my grandchildren range from about almost 2 to almost 17. So
you are a busy grandfather.
We are 7. So what are they going to be doing? How are they going to be treated? What is going to be their lifestyle? What's their opportunities? All of those things really meld into any decision that I make.
Wow, that's very impactful.
Well, I don't know. I think you watch those little young ones and watch them start to grow up. It's real special.
Looking for a better future for them.
It is, and we will make it that way.
And that speaks, I think, to your passion and your concern and your commitment to the state, a better future for the state, for the children that we have now, and for what the state looks like as they grow up.
Yeah, and we have, we're blessed. We have an autistic grandchild, and so Lynn and I have spent a lot of time on autism. Both y'all have the case centers, of course, and there are others. And then we have been working with the universities to get the BCBAs trained better to come and work with them. And that opened our eyes to a lot of young people that have some learning disability or dyslexia or other issues like you deal with so many times over at Blair Batson. And those were very interesting to make sure that up until really several years ago, we didn't really have very, very much to offer those children. We're better now, and we'll be better next year and the next year. We'll have better trained people, we'll have better facilities and stuff. So I think all of the grandchildren, all of that, those that are healthy and doing well, and those that have some challenges, I think that gives you a perspective, I think.
It inspires you and gives you that motivation for a better future.
Well, if I make it better for my 7, I'll probably make it better for the other 300,000 too.
That's right. That's right. So is there anything during this time that you thought I would ask, or that you hoped I would ask, that I haven't covered?
Yeah, I want to talk to you about the last 2 years. We watched with everybody else with alarm and pessimism and scare and fear and everything else about what was going on in the state and in the country and in the world. To me, I thought this was the medical community's finest hour. When I watched all of the things that y'all did, I had COVID, came here. It was really a struggle, and it was a struggle for so many other people. And I saw y'all put up ICU rooms in tents out in the parking lot and all this other kind of stuff. And I just thought that what a phenomenal thing that was done there, and really in battle against a very wary enemy that we really didn't understand, still don't understand how it got here and what the next variant will be. But you never went away from the battlefield. It's like you went towards the battlefield. If that makes any sense. And so I was just so impressed with the physicians here and the ones that I met with when I was ill, and then also your nurses, your ICU beds. We did get the legislature to give an extra $10 million to fix up ICU beds and whatnot. All of those were occupied throughout the state this past year. So I thought when we visited that I wanted to make sure that I told you so many times, like, this will pass, and people go on to the next problem. But they don't take time really to say thank you or that you did a good job, and I thought you did a great job.
Wow, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I say that on behalf of so many. There were so many folks here that were visible and out in front. Myself, a lot of the physicians, a lot of our team. But for every one of us, there were so many that were not visible and not out in front. The folks in the lab, all of the nurses, so many people that didn't kind of get that public presence, but were absolutely critical. And just like you said, it's not over, it's still going.
No, it's not.
We're trying hard to figure out how to live with it, because it looks like it'll be with us for a while.
Yeah.
But there were some scary days. There were some
Still
scary
are,
days.
and I did go to some ICU rooms and visit with nurses that were taking care of people. And, just in these hazmat suits, and the family couldn't see someone who was dying here. We had women giving birth and dying, and the baby would never see their mother. It was just horrific. And but how those people dealt with that from a medical side, a mental side, an approach, the care that was given to people they probably never knew before they showed up in that room was just kind of phenomenal to me. It really, I hope, makes everyone proud of what they do.
Well, I think there is a sense of pride and a sense of purpose. I remember at one point back when we had the tents in the parking garage here, somebody just asked me, a casual friend, so how are things going? And I said, we have patients in tents in the parking garage.
Yeah.
What else can I say?
Mm-hmm.
It has been a couple of years of just
Challenges. Or opportunities, whatever.
A phrase that runs through my head from time to time that sort of, just like you mentioned about your grandchildren, there is that motivation to do what you feel like is the right thing for the state, and at least we have the luxury of thinking about it from the healthcare perspective. We don't have to think about all the broad perspective that so many of you do, but thinking about it from the healthcare perspective. But there's a phrase that has run through my mind many times that kind of sounds like what you were mentioning: walk toward the bullets.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't back down. It's what I feel like. That's what our role was, and I'm very proud of the medical center and
you
the
should
response that we had.
Of you and everybody here.
Well, thank you.
Like I said, I think it was your finest hour.
And thank you for your support during that time too, as well. We appreciate you being here with us today.
Happy to come. Place looks great. Looking forward to next year. We are very interested in the delivery of healthcare services. We're challenged somewhat by some other people who think that may not be as important as I do. So we've got to navigate through all of that. But I think having a first-class medical center is a key component of that. I think having a first-class physicians, nurses, dentists, the others you produce here, are first class. That's the future in Mississippi. That's what I was talking about, the next generation. Mm-hmm. They're being raised down this hall here. They'll take care of so many of us. So I think how the university goes over the next years, not only on physical plant, which I think is somewhat dated from the core part here, that it needs help, but also how you're going to deliver services, the telemedicine stuff. We'll have a telemedicine bill this year. We'll have some conflicts with the insurance companies on payment and whatnot, but we're going to get through those. We'll have a telemedicine bill this year. We'll also have legislation. We've got sufficient funds, I think, to be able to support some expansion capabilities here, and which ones we choose are going to be really important. We can't do them all, so prioritizing is important. You've been real good about talking about that, as your staff. So we'll be going into that pretty early in the session. A lot of healthcare things will come about. The nurse retention program is important. We have 7 counties who don't have any emergency room or healthcare. I want to see that we don't have any. Maybe Issaquena, it's only got 1,800 people. But the rest of them all need to have some kind of access to healthcare. The cost of healthcare is staggering. And how we do that, there are some things we're looking at that would lower the cost of drugs to our public employees, which we are, and also our Medicare and Medicaid recipients. Some innovative things that I think in joining with other states. So there's a lot of healthcare things that are coming on the cusp, I think, this next session. And I think they're all positive and all needed.
Very encouraging. Mm-hmm. Very encouraging.
I think so.
Very encouraging. And like I said earlier, your level of interest and knowledge and willingness to take on some of these tough things is critically important. We thank you so much for
that's
that.
what you pay me to do. That's my job.
Thank you so much.
It's good to be with you, and everyone have happy holidays and a very successful new year.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to wrap up this session. Thank you for joining us. Happy holidays to everybody, and thank you again to the Medical Center family for all that you do.